Hello everyone and welcome to Drax Corner. So I decided today I was going to do a video on our Ifrits. Now my guild has been, I've got a lot of people in my guild that have been working for Ifrits for a while, and some of them just recently got theirs and they've got lots of questions. So I decided I wanted to do a video and cover all 4 of the Ifrits, as there is no light Ifrit in the game yet. He does exist in the game code, but he's not currently obtainable and you can't look at him. So I wanted to look through these guys real quick, give you some ideas on how to rune and how to build them, and then we'll go from there. So first, I wanted to look at Veramos. Veramos is our Dark Ifrit. He's obtainable only through fusion. You got to go to the fusion hexagram and gather the monsters and build him. Now, he is more of a support role than the other 3. The other 3 Ifrits are all definitely damage based, whereas he is more just there to help keep your team alive. So let's look at his skills. First skill does a dot. It's a 70% chance, or sorry, 75% chance to deal a dot on hit when he's fully skilled. Now the damage does scale with speed, so the faster speed, the more power it hits for. Second skill attacks all enemies and it stuns them for the 30% chance. The damage is proportionate to your max HP. So the damage is 120% of your attack plus 16% of your max HP. So not too bad for damage if you build him for HP. And it has a chance to stun. It's a 60% chance to stun when he's fully skilled. Now his third skill is a passive, and this is what really makes Veramos shine and what makes him really good for team scenarios. His third skill removes a weakening effect except in ability effects on all allies each turn, and he heals by 3% HP for each effect removed. Now inability effects are stun, sleep, and freeze. So he'll remove anything that is not one of those 3 every turn if there's one on your team, and he'll heal himself by a small percent each time. So this is great for giants. This is amazing for dragons because he removes the dots off your team. He's really good for Trial of Ascension because he's removing debuffs from your team. And he has an AoE stun, and also he has a really nice leader skill, which is increases everyone's HP by 33%. Now leader skills, in case you don't know, they only work off of the base values, so your runes will not affect leader skills at all. But still, 33%, that's quite a number. That's a couple thousand extra health for most units. Alright, so how would you build this guy? Well, realistically, depending on what you want to use him for. If you're using him for dragons, I would do speed, HP for your stats. You want some good accuracy substats. And if you don't have good accuracy substats, you can use focus runes. I would put him on violent for dragons. If you are doing giants, I would put him again on focus, and I would actually probably focus more on swift, because if you're still going through giants, you probably don't have very good violence yet. So focus more on swift there. If you're using him for TOA, then despair is the way to go. His despair rune builds will really help you out trying to work your way up through the trials. Again though, you want to do speed, HP on his stats with strong accuracy substats. If you're going PvP with him, then violent or despair is really the way you want to go, because he can either stun the enemy team down or he can just get lots of turns and just really pound them down for you. So that's how I would worry about building him. You can build him for damage if you want. I've heard a few people doing it, and it kind of just is there to throw enemies off, since most people don't know how to, or most people will ignore Veramos because he doesn't seem to do a lot of damage. If you're building him for damage though, you really should do probably speed, crit damage, attack percent, and I'll explain more about that when we get to the water and fire Ifrits because of the math on their first skill. So yeah, that's about all I got for the Dark Ifrit. And now let's jump over to our friend Akamamir. So Akamamir is your premier AoE Ifrit. His main purpose is going to be for Trial of Ascension, but he is still good for giants, he is still good for dragons, and he is still good for PvP. But Trial of Ascension is where he really shines, and here's why. So his first and second skill are the same as Veramos, who we just looked at. His third skill, though, it attacks all enemies twice. and the damage it deals increases by 30% for each harmful effect that is already on the enemy. So this is just really great if you've got him with the right team, especially in Trial of Ascension, because the damage scaling on that is incredible. I've used my friends' Akamamirs for clearing scenarios and clearing Kairos Dungeon, and I had a friend's Akamamir who wasn't even ruined that good. I had him hit the Giant for over 45k on his third skill, because I had like 6 or 7 debuffs up on the Giant. It was amazing. He's great for that. His third skill increases everyone's accuracy by 41%. So with his leader skill, that pretty much covers your hard accuracy cap for almost everything that you could need to do. So for Trial of Ascension, he's great because that means you can put him in the team as the leader, and then you wouldn't have to worry about very much accuracy substats for your team at all. Now you probably still want a little bit. You want to get him up to about 50 to 60, but this covers most of your needs for most of your characters. How I would ruin him, honestly, it really depends on whether you want to focus on his first skill or his third skill. So you don't want to focus on his second, because the damage scaling on his second just isn't that good. It's just there for utility. So with him having 2 AoEs, I would seriously consider doing Despair Runes on him and going speed, crit damage, attack percent. Or if you really want to just focus on the damage of his third skill, instead of doing Despair, you could do Fatal. Fatal or Despair would work fine. And you could do attack percent, crit damage, attack percent. Now, of course, that means he's not going to get as many turns, so overall his damage will probably be a little lower, except when his third skill's up. When his third skill's up, if you've properly prepared the enemy team or enemy boss for him, his third skill will make up for the damage lost with his speed. Other options, all the Ifrits do really well on Violent. Violent is just disgusting with these guys. For your 2 set on him, because he's got that accuracy boost, you can use Focus if you want, but if you've got accuracy on 1 or 2 substats of your runes, you don't need Focus on him. So I would actually put him on Blade or Revenge, depending on what your needs are. Those would work really well on him in helping bring his damage up total. And now let's jump over to our Water Ifrit. Now, this guy is the fan favorite. His name is Theomars. He is considered one of the best Ifrits for PvP, but he is not my favorite for PvP, and I'll explain why here in a moment. And we'll actually run through the math on his first skill for this guy, and for the second one. And for the fire one. So, his first skill, of course, is the same as all the Ifrits. His second skill, though, it attacks the enemies 3 times with magic, and weakens their defense for 2 turns with a 50% chance each. Now, let me check real quick, see if that increases as he skills up. Can't quite remember. Yeah, so it turns into a 70% chance each with his second skill. So, attacks 3 times, 70% chance to break their defense. And then his third skill is his passive. It makes it so he always has element attribute advantage, meaning he can attack wind monsters and still do full damage to them without having to worry about glancing hit, and without having to worry about crit reduction. And if he receives fatal damage, it just drops him down to 1 HP, and he can't die for 1 turn. So that gives him 1 turn to do something else, or 1 turn for you to try and heal him back up. And his third skill increases the crit rate of ally monsters by 24%. So that right there is amazing if you're doing a high damage team. So let's look at the math on his skills real quick. Alright, so the damage on his first skill is going to look like this. So the damage is speed plus 210 divided by 0.7. And that's how much of his attack stat that he uses for damage on his first skill. So if you were to build him straight up attack without any speed, this move would still hit really hard. But if you get his speed up to 223 or higher, his first skill will actually do more damage with a speed build than it will with an attack build, which is why I recommend putting at least the fire and water both on speed, crit damage, and attack, is because the amount of damage once you hit 223 just scales up exponentially higher with that than it does with just straight out attack stats. Plus, you'll get a lot more turns out of it that way. It just ends up working out really, really well. What kind of runes would you put on this guy? Well, he'll do well on Fatal Runes. He'll do well on Violent Runes. He'll do well on Swift Runes. Any of those sets would work well for him. You could also put him on Blade or Revenge, and he'd do fairly well. His main application, though, will always be PvP. Now, he is good for some things PvP oriented, PvE oriented, but he is just mainly there for your PvP stuff. Alright, so next, let's pop over to my personal favorite, the Fire Ifrit Tessarion. Now, by most people just looking at it, they actually consider the Fire Ifrit to be the worst one. And yeah, it's true. When you're just starting out, if he's your first Ifrit, then he's going to look like the worst one. If your runes aren't that great, then he will probably be the worst one to have. However, when you actually look at his skills and what they can do and what they can give you for end game, he ends up being, in my opinion, a lot more valuable, at least for PvP, than any of the other Ifrits. So let's look at why. So he's got the same first skill and the same second skill as Theomar's, the water one. It's his passive that sets him apart. So his passive is called Ancient Power. It increases the damage that he inflicts to enemies by 30%. If they have a harmful effect on them. It doesn't matter which harmful effect, he does more damage if they have a harmful effect. Also, whenever he hits a monster, he makes them oblivious. Oblivious makes it so their passives will not activate. Now, that means that, like Theomar's, we were just talking about Theomar's, he actually shuts Theomar's down, because if he hits Theomar's with Oblivion, Theomar's passive won't activate, so now he can glancing hit on wind monsters. Now, he will die if his HP drops to 0 without his Elemental King activating. That also means that he can kill monsters such as Perna. He prevents them from healing every turn. He also prevents them from resurrecting. He actually works great against Veramos, the Dark Ifrit, because he makes it so Veramos can't cleanse anyone and can't heal himself. Rena, the Water Epicyon Priest, makes it so she can't shield herself. Camilla, the Water Valkyria, makes it so she can't cleanse herself, can't heal herself. So he just basically takes any monster that has a passive that is scary in PvP and just removes all of the threat from them by eliminating that passive. So that enables your team to kill them rather easily. The only catch is, of course, you need to have high accuracy on him in order to punch through. So again, like I mentioned with Theomar's, he's got the same first and second skill. So the big thing is with him, again, you're going to want speed. You want to be fast with this guy. The threshold to make it so that your speed damage outdoes your attack damage is you need to have 223 speed. Now, that can be on top of, you can do that as your base, so that's what you get for your runes, but that can also include, leader skills that can include your speed tower that you get from PvP. So, realistically, any way that you can get him to 223 damage will make it so he hits harder than he would if he just went raw attack, on his first skill at least. Now, that will leave his second skill a little weaker, but it's really the first skill that makes these guys scary. On this guy, if you have a good crit chance on your substats, I would absolutely put him on Revenge with Violent. If you don't have Violent with good enough speed, then you can totally go with Swift. You could put him on Fatal, but honestly, I feel like he's missing out on some of his core abilities if you put him on Fatal. It really feels like Swift and Violent are the only two real options for him, with Revenge as your 2-set. If you have good crit chance. If you don't have good crit chance, then stick with your Blade substats. Blah, blah, blah. Wow. Stick with your Blade 2-sets. That'll help him out a lot. Now, I wanted to give you guys this video to kind of help you decide which Ifrit is best for your needs, but I also wanted to point out one thing particularly for my guild about it, and that is all of the Ifrits are good, but Ifrits take so long to build. And if your guild is struggling, you might be able to help your guild out a lot more by just getting your first Ifrit, whichever one that happens to be, and then stop trying to farm Ifrits for a while. And instead, come over here and focus on these. Now these are something a lot of people don't even notice. Alright, all the way at the end here. The guild flags. Now the guild flags boost crit damage, HP, defense, and attack percent. Alright, all of these flags are good to have, and they do stack with your Glory Shop buildings. However, these flags only affect guild battles. Now, if you're struggling with guild battles, you're having a hard time winning them, then this can help you out with winning your guild battles, which will help your guild. And these can be infinitely more useful to you and your guild than getting more Ifrits. So my advice is get your first Ifrit, worry about ruining him the way you want him, and then focus on these until you get these up a little ways. After you get these up a little ways, then go back and start farming the Ifrits to get the Ifrit that you really want or that you need for your current point in the game. But realistically, honestly, you get the Fire Ifrit. A lot of people cry when they get the Fire Ifrit, but in my opinion, Tessarion is the best one. I'm actually working on mine right now. I don't care for some of his runes. I'm working to improve those. And he's going to be my next 6-star. I actually may have him 6-starred as early as Tuesday morning. So look out for that. I plan on throwing him in guild battles immediately as soon as I get his runes where I like him. And I look forward to just roasting everyone alive with this guy. But until next time, this is Drac. Please subscribe. Please share these videos around. And if you have any suggestions, let me know. Otherwise, you have yourself a great day, and thanks for joining me in the corner.